Hi, most of you know me, but I am Karen Spencer, and I'm coming to you today as the product manager for Orasi Labs. Orasi Labs is the new SaaS product built by Orasi to provide training labs in the cloud. The development team has been hard at work, and we are nearing product launch. So far, we have used Orasi Labs for both internal and external training classes. In fact, if you have a customer that has taken a class through Orasi University in about the last 10 months, chances are they have used Orasi Labs as part of that training. One of the last few tasks before launch is to get some pre-release customers onto the product, and that's where you come in. Many of you are in conversation with our customers every day, and we may be asking for your help to find some early customers. We have created this video to communicate who uses Orasi Labs, what challenges they're having, and how Orasi Labs solves those challenges. It's just under 10 minutes long. We're about a minute in, so give me about 9 minutes and I'll get you up to speed. First, let's start with who this was built for. Anyone responsible for application training can benefit from Orasi Labs. This could be someone training internal employees or external customers. There are many roles that could be involved in training internal employees. HR is an obvious choice, but really any department that needs to train team members on a software application. That could be IT or dev, or even a group like accounting or sales. Roles involved in training external customers could be director of professional services, delivery manager, or instructor. Now you may be asking yourself, why is it so important to allow participants to have their hands on the keyboard? Can I just present a bunch of slides, show them how it's done, and consider them trained? Well, if you go that route, research done by the National Training Laboratories shows that learners will retain about 5% of what you teach through lecture. If you demonstrate something, you may get a 30% retention rate. However, when adding in more active learning, such as allowing students to practice their new knowledge, retention jumps to as much as 75%. Also, modern learners literally grew up with technology in their hands, so asking them to learn something without putting their hands on it makes it very difficult for them to relate it to real life and explore solutions that are relevant to their situation. So if you want students to retain what they learn and be able to apply it to real life, hands-on learning is the way to go. But providing a hands-on environment for students to use does come with challenges. Providing physical machines for each student can be extremely costly. Not only the obvious cost of the hardware, but there's the resource cost as well. Setting up even a simple environment typically requires the training group get assistance from the IT staff to find the necessary machines and install and configure the necessary software. Let's take a look at a couple of ways that Orasi Labs helps with cost. With Orasi Labs, the training machines reside in the cloud. Someone in the training group logs into their Orasi Labs account, and there we'll see what's called lab templates that have been created for different training environments. A lab template is what defines the environment that will be used for each training class. So examples might be we have a template for Tableau training or Salesforce training, or maybe some developer tools. As an instructor making sure I have an environment for my class, I can use one that's already out there, or I can easily create a new one. For our example, let's create one for a UFT class. This steps us through everything necessary, starting with the name and description. I can start with a base image or copy it in an existing template. We'll start with a base image. I want this to be a Windows machine. I then select the appropriate machine size. Now that we have the lab template defined, I can start the lab template and install and configure any applications that are required for my particular class. Once the machine is started, I can expand it and complete any necessary steps. I'm not going to go through the entire UFT installation here, but realize at this point I am accessing the remote machine through a browser and working just as if the machine was local. As an instructor, I was able to do all of this without requiring any additional resources from my IT department. Another reason that traditional training environments can be quite costly is due to idle hardware between training classes. It's hard to predict training demand, and costly hardware can end up sitting idle. We can avoid that entirely with Orasi Labs. You can see here on the overview page, we track classroom hours. With Orasi Labs, each subscription level entitles you to a certain number of classroom hours. Classroom hours are simply the hours that instructor or student machines are used in a class. The class itself may be 8 hours of lecture and hands-on exercises, but if the students are only on the machine 3.5 of those hours, we only count 3.5 hours. This makes Orasi Labs cost-effective for someone teaching 1 class a month or 100 classes a month. Consistency between environments is also a challenge. Each environment must of course be correct, but it also must be perfectly consistent not only for each student, but for each class. When you provide instructions for a hands-on exercise, the environment must match the instructions, and that can be really difficult to keep up with. Some instructors will try having the students provide their own environment. That is highly unpredictable and will likely lead to quite a bit of valuable classroom time being taken up with troubleshooting the environment. With Orasi Labs, once I verify the lab template has everything installed, I can publish it and then it can be used and reused across multiple classes. This is the template we created earlier. And remember, this lab template will be used for a test automation class and has UFT installed and configured. This template is published and therefore it's ready to be used in a class. Classes are created and scheduled directly in Orasi Labs here under Classes. You can see that we have several classes out there. I could also create a new one over here under Add Class. In the interest of time, this is a class in Orasi Labs that I created earlier. It's scheduled to start today. If we take a closer look, you can see I've provided basic logistics, things like start date, end date, and so on. If this is a virtual class, I can include the information for the presentation part of the class. We can also see if I scroll down that we've got a few students added to this class. And I've also specified the environment that will be used. To specify the environment, I simply added the lab template that we created earlier. So this lab template has UFT installed, configured, and ready to go. We will then be able to have machines matching that template for the instructor as well as each of the students. If there are any files I want to push to the machines, I can include those here. As an instructor, all I have to do to get the environments ready for myself and each of the students is start them here. That will start machines matching the lab template for the instructor as well as each student. Once they start, I have access to my instructor machine here under my labs. I can also see each of the student machines here. I'll show you a bit later what we can do with those student machines. As an instructor, I set up the environments once, and then by clicking Start Labs, I now have machines running for me as well as each of the students. As an instructor, I have peace of mind knowing that the machines were created correctly and are consistent for each student. Now let's look at this from a student's perspective. As a student, and I'm going to be David Hand for a bit, I get an email telling me that I'm registered for a class. When it's time to access the lab, I simply click this link here, and that takes me directly into the classroom where I can see my lab machine. If this was a virtual class, I could also access the online meeting space. When I'm ready to work on an exercise, I can full screen the machine, and now through my browser, I can interact with the remote machine just as if everything was local. So as a student, I didn't have to install or configure anything. I come to class with everything set up perfectly to go along with the instructions for each exercise. If the instructor has made any files available to me as a student, those are located here under Class Files. We have already looked at how Orasi Labs can help with the cost and consistency of training environments. Much of the application training happening these days is virtual training, which presents yet another challenge. For virtual students, how do instructors get visibility into the student machines? As an instructor, if my students are in the same room, I am typically walking around the room providing assistance. I can't do that with virtual students. Without being able to see student machines, to see if they're struggling, and even take control of the machine if necessary, it can be a bit like teaching in the dark. With Orasi Labs, visibility is no longer an issue. I showed you earlier how the instructor can see each of the student machines here under Student Labs. This is a real-time view into what is happening on the student machines. So as an instructor, even if it's a virtual class, I can see who is stuck, I can see who is 10 steps ahead of me, and I don't want to name names here, but I can also see if someone is watching YouTube videos during class. If someone needs extra help, I can take control of that machine using the lock icon. And now, as an instructor, I have full access to that student's machine and can do what is necessary to assist the student and get them moving forward. Hopefully that helps explain who uses Orasi Labs, what challenges they are having, and how Orasi Labs solves those challenges. I know that was a lot to cover in just a few minutes, so thank you for hanging in there. Please get in touch with me if you have any questions or need any additional details around what we covered. Thanks so much.